So you're telling me that randomly Klein decides to have these two individuals alter the luck enhancement ritual and somehow manages to reverse the summoning ritual to bring him fog powers? Gotcha. Gotcha. I feel like most of this story I get and I love it to death, but whenever it comes to that fog realm, it suddenly gets to this point where it kind of stretches things a bit, and that's where it kind of throws me off. And so I'm not sure if it's just like they're failing to adapt a lot of the conclusion that Klein's coming to, because I think the whole moment where he's deciding to start to kind of experiment with things is interesting, and I like the direction that it's going there, where he wants to kind of break the rules, I guess is the best way to put it. But the conclusion he comes to sometimes is like, how do you come to the idea that you could just alter the luck ritual and it will give you god powers? It basically implied that, at least what the Hanged Man was coming to the theory of, and I kind of agree with it, if he's having him sort of put his words into this format, he's putting himself into the realm of God itself. It makes sense what Klein's having them do. It's just coming to the conclusion that that will do that. That's the stretch. But again, I guess that comes from the idea that Klein is experimenting with this. This got me to go here, and so if I get them to alter it and perform this, it might pull to here. That's where I'm kind of gathering in the end. But again, it's always like that realm of like, where does he come to this conclusion? How does he come to the conclusion? One thing that I'm wondering if possibly is sort of being missed here is that in this episode, Klein brings up Gustav's journal again. He brings up those notes. He brings up something that was in it that he read. And I don't think that was brought up when he was in the room with Neil back there reading it. So I'm thinking there's probably some stuff that was in that book that has been covered at some point between then and now that is been skipped. And we're just kind of bringing them up as we go. Which isn't a big deal, but at the same time does kind of suck. It does kind of suck where it's like suddenly he pops up with something and I go, news to me. Cool, I guess. I guess. But anyways, let's get in the episode proper. Really, really cool episode. The ending was bonkers. The bit with Audrey was crazy with the dog. But anyways, let's get in the episode proper. Opening up with this guy talking to the Oracle. They're part of the Aurora Order, which you find out the Aurora Order from a big, massive wall of text on the screen is a newer group that appeared 200, 300 years ago, worships the true creator, which if I remember correctly, the true creator is the one that started the whole, in their beliefs, started the creation process and kind of broke up into different things. But their belief system is that they worship the true creator, and they believe that the creator is not completely perished. That's the key thing there, because I think they kind of implied that it kind of broke up into multiple things and sort of became things. It still exists. It left behind a core of existence as its true creator. The Hanged Giant is a representation of that being, and it looks like we actually got to see that at the end of the episode, which does get into an interesting theory around Klein later on that we'll get into. They believe that all things have godhood. The life of a human is a journey of the psyche. As long as one's willing to listen to teachings, they will learn, discover, and focus their godhood, ultimately becoming angels to ascend beyond reality. The members of the Order more or less have distorted thinking patterns, no matter how normal they appear, Vincent. The organization has the secret suppliant pathway. Interesting. But yeah, he's begging for his life, and this is where it kind of reveals the fact that it seems like this particular person, Vincent, is the one that gave the book to Klein and his friends, and they were seen as sort of sacrificial lambs to look into the book, test it out, probably die, and sure enough, they all die, except for, it seems like Klein did die, but he somehow survived, and so he's got to get the book back and find out where Klein is. That's where we get into Klein doing his training process. He goes to Neil, and he does a ritualistic magic, which is sort of like seemingly some way of sort of asking for help from the gods, which he does this particular chant, seeking aid, and he asks to pay his debt. Help me with my 30-pound debt. The client's like, what the hell? You're asking for help with your debt? And sure enough, they walk out there and they walk around for a little bit, ends up finding a wallet. Has full belief the fact that this goddess is going to help him out with his debt. And I like it because he says later on that you seem to have some sort of ignorance and you have shamefully weak trust in your eyes. Yeah, obviously, didn't think it was going to actually happen. But I like the fact that in the process of doing it, again, the idea here is that this god has sort of given him guidance. Go this direction. It seems to imply that he was driven to walk out to that curb and something will happen. Sure enough, a wallet's there. The wallet has money in it. And then somebody comes by and says, no, that's my wallet. And he goes, oh yeah, the crest on your thing. He gives it back. Even Klein's thinking, oh crap, is he going to actually keep it? Because he's supposed to pay off his debt. He was led to this. Is he going to keep it? But no, he has to trust in it. Specifically, it says, Mystery Prior's motto, do as you wish, but do no harm. So the idea here is that if he were to do something wrong, there's something bad that could possibly happen. Do good. Don't do harm. Give back the wallet. You will end up getting that 30 pounds. Give it to them because you don't do harm. Sure enough, the guy gives him money. Exactly 30 pounds. It's a cool little thing there because, again, it gives credit to this whole system. And with Klein, he's got this, again, shamefully weak trust. Okay, you're in a world where you have seer powers, magical powers, you're talking to spirits and crap. Why wouldn't you believe that these gods do exist and that they are technically going to give that guidance to you? You're constantly using this magic. You're constantly using mysticism. Why would you not believe that this mysticism will actually work properly? It was almost like a way of kind of shoving it back in his face, like you're supposed to trust this whole system. Yeah, during that whole process of teaching him, yeah, he does mention again, don't communicate with the unknown. And he kind of thinks that possibly that's what happened when he did the luck enhancement ritual. Maybe I sought power from an unknown entity, and that's why I'm here, suffering, waiting death. It was kind of an interesting little note there. But this is where we get into, again, that little mention about Rozel's diary. The note that I was mentioning earlier, which I don't think they ever really kind of talked about before. He said that the Emperor Rozel's diary says that the key to potions is digestion and acting. Specifically saying that the motto implies acting. The motto of do as you wish, but do no harm. So he's kind of connecting the two of them and kind of getting to a conclusion that that sort of lines up with what the diary says. Keep acting. He said the divinations in battle, I started feeling that digestion. So maybe the idea here is to keep using your abilities. Yeah, like he gets into later on. Go start doing divinations and becoming like an actual worker and keep doing these things and make money while doing it. And at the same time, you're going to digest this stuff. It's all this idea of constant use, which is interesting because it starts to get me to my theory that I almost feel like this world is explaining how this whole system works in a way that is purposely preventing people from getting better, purposely preventing people from digesting the potion and getting stronger. It almost feels as if Gustav's diary, Rozel's diary, is sort of somebody else's perspective coming here and learning what the people says, how it works, and doing it wrong. And now he's passed on to Klein the proper way to do this. And it does kind of fit in with what he talks to Hanged Man and Justice about. No, do it this way. That's what Gustav said. This is the way you should be doing it because it's the proper way of doing it to get stronger. Don't listen to what they teach you to do. Hanged Man was saying what they teach you to do. Don't do that. Do this. But I do kind of feel it's going to end up being a double-edged sword, where it will be one of those things where even though it is actually the way to progress faster and become stronger, it might actually be a path that's the most dangerous. Kind of similar to what Neil was saying, the idea of, talking to the unknown entities. It's going to cause you suffering. Good example is what Dunsmith told Klein when he first joined. All these individuals in here that went down this path to madness, those might have been the people that went the more treacherous path that was to more strength. And they end up losing their minds. But we'll see though. Anyways, he ends up bumping into the Divination Club. Kind of find out later on this was all kind of set up by Vincent. Vincent foretold this, and they brought him in. And he goes in there and gets a divination, ends up seeing the guy looking pretty sick, ends up joining the club so that he can use his divinations more. That way he can actually digest the stuff faster. And then finds out that Vincent is doing classes for magic mirror divinations. Yeah, I almost feel like this whole scene here was almost to show that Vincent is very familiar with doing magic with mirrors, but also I find it to be a good way to kind of refresher the whole systems of doing the mysticism and calling out these 3 descriptions for the 7 gods, which as we see later on, that's literally what he does when he has the ritual changed with Hanged Man and Justice. But yeah, he has Vincent do a little divination for him, kind of find out it's a really expensive one. The guy does it for free, obviously, doing it for a reason. And this is actually an interesting thing here because you almost see based on how the episode plays out that this was sort of Vincent setting up things to seed something into Klein's mind. The idea of gathering and family. He's literally telling Klein, look out for a gathering and family because he knows this girl is tied in with Klein's sister and they're going to be invited to this birthday party. He's literally setting up a trap for Klein. But Klein has taken it in a different direction. He's taken it to the idea of the gathering above to the gray fog. Not sure what that has to do with family, but he's at least connecting the gathering aspect with going to the gray fog. And this all leads into, again, Klein's interesting little scene where he's trying to find out his path to growth. And yes, initially he's talking about, yes, I need to do divinations, I can do this as a job, I can receive payments, win-win. But then he gets into the two paths that he sees that he can sort of return back home. The first path he says to digest the potion, continue advancing in his path, and to see if the Beyonder powers can control the gray fog. That was sort of my original conclusion I was coming to as we went through the episodes and he started kind of building up his powers here. I assumed at some point he was going to figure out a way to tap into the fog powers and bring it to this world. And I thought that was a really cool way of doing that is through the seer powers, figuring out some way of sort of connecting to two worlds. Seems like we're kind of doing that with the reversed ritual, honestly. But he says with that way, finding the clues on the clown potion and subsequent potions will be the key. Plus, advancing takes a long time. Again, he's currently building up seer, and he's still digesting that potion. It's obviously taking a long time. The second option that he comes to is the part where it's like, where do we get this stretch of logic? The second option was to amend the description in the luck enhancement ritual. Again, the luck enhancement ritual is what brought him to this world, and it's what he was trying to use to get back out to his original world, but then he ends up in the fog world. So his idea here is to amend the ritual and redirect the chant onto himself. If he can link himself to the gray fog, then maybe he can use the incantation to borrow the gray fog's power. Now that part makes sense. So he's going to the conclusion here that I use that ritual to come here. I use the ritual to try to go back, but then I end up in the fog area. Well, if I alter it a little bit, adjust it, and realign these certain parts of the ritual, I can make, instead of going there, the power come to me. And then that power, which, as we've kind of seen, is manifestation, whatever he thinks or whatever, with the fog, it creates it. Maybe with that power, which seems like a lot of power, I can use that power to push me back to Earth. Which the power itself, being a fuel, makes sense. It's, again, just how do we come to the conclusion that you could just literally just kind of just aim it back to yourself? That was a stretch. But yes, the lines that he's changing is the full doesn't belong here, mysterious ruler above the gray fog, the king of yellow and black who wields good luck. And yeah, the yellow and black stood out to me immediately when I read that. I'm like, I got to look that up later on. I was told that it was heaven and earth is what the two colors mean in Chinese. So that makes sense. The king of heaven and earth. But yeah, interesting little kind of direction he's going there. Again, the more I kind of think about it, I guess it makes sense, the conclusion that he's coming to with the idea of pushing and pulling. Now he's kind of moving the route of pulling. Again, how he gets to the conclusion of giving that to Hanged Man and Justice to do it, it's fine. It makes sense in the end, I guess. But yes, he's interrupted by Melissa. Cute little Melissa outside the door. Made a little human doll. Not a turtle. Don't call it a turtle. She's so cute. She's out there. I think what they're kind of implying here is that Melissa's obviously seeing that Klein is doing a lot of work. I think they kind of gave that indication back in the first episode, even before he took over the body. It seemed like she had a lot of worry for him. And it seems like it's kind of snowballing a bit here with him now being in control of Klein, doing all this work as a seer. It seems to imply that she is getting a sense here that he is overworking himself. He's doing a lot of stuff. He's not sitting still. He's not taking breaks. And she's kind of getting worried about him. So she made him a cute little human doll that he can watch that will relieve his stress. It was cute. It's a turtle. That's a really cool turtle. She got a little pout face. A very subtle pout face. I like that was a very subtle one. Super cute. But yeah, she invites him to the gathering, and he immediately agrees. That's when we get the meeting in the fog. And again, this is where it kind of gets a little crazy here. Every time there's a meeting in the fog, I am completely lost in a lot of regards. But anyways, let's go through this. He first arrives there, immediately realizes that when he's there, his seer powers are amplified. He looks to the Hanged Man. It looks like he's got some crazy waves. He looks to Justice, and she looks like a calm lake. I'm not sure exactly what that aura is going to be, if it implies the location they are, or just what kind of person they are. And again, I sort of attribute this to the idea that when he's back at home or back on the planet, not in this world. When he's using his seer powers, he just sees like a faint glow around the person to give the indication of how they're feeling and whatnot. Whereas when he's in that world, he sees a bigger picture of what exactly the personality of them is, whatnot. I think that's what they're sort of going with there. But additionally, yes, we find out that Justice did get the potion. They are now spectator. And immediately he sees symbols for the two of them. With Justice, he sees a dragon, which seems to indicate spectator. With Hanged Man, he sees a storm, which seems to imply the Sailor pathway. And then he looks back to his own. Now, here's the interesting part, because the assumption is that what he's going to see behind him is the Seer one. I'm curious if it's going to end up being the Seer one, because what it looked like, what he described it as, was that it was a pupilless eye, which I'm guessing that's that area at the very top, which is kind of cut off, representing concealment, and then contorted lines representing change. But it's incomplete and the two overlap. Now, I didn't really think of too much of it other than it just being, again, sort of the eyeball, which he kind of is pointing out there, and then sort of just kind of almost a cross layout. That's what I was getting. And then again, at the very end of the episode, we see what I'm assuming at this point is going to be the creator, which was an upside down crucifixion. And then it had one single gem or whatever eyeball at the very bottom that didn't have a pupil. So I'm wondering if back here he was basically stating that, and over here you literally have it kind of being laid out. Now the placement of the eye is different. Again, it's upside down versus right side up. But I think what it's sort of implying there is that the symbol behind Klein might possibly be a symbol that may indicate the creator. I think that's where it's going with that. Now, I could be totally wrong. That could just be the seared pathway, and I'm going down some crazy rabbit hole. But that's the feeling I got when I seen the crucifixion at the very end upside down. That might actually be that symbolism. Because it had the legs even wrapped, if I remember correctly, going up the crucifixion. And again, having that single eye at the bottom. We'll see, though. But yeah, that's when Justice ends up having all of her little questions that she wants to ask. What is expected of a spectator? We get, again, this is where I was talking about earlier, what feels like what the people believe you're supposed to do with these Beyonder powers, and what is actually the path to growth. What the expectation the Hangman says is that, yes, you're supposed to be an onlooker, maintain a strict, detached attitude, spectate calmly and objectively. And again, this all kind of lines up with a lot of the teaching that they were telling Klein about a seer. Again, don't converse with the unknown. Don't question things too much. If you see something, ignore it. Don't dig too much. Again, boundaries. And this is what Hangman's saying. He's saying boundaries. From minute clues, you can grasp at true thoughts. You must grasp at the potion's power. Tap into what the potion's name represents. And avoid losing control as much as possible. Again, constraints. And then that's when Klein speaks up. And it is kind of interesting that whenever he speaks up, it's always in a different voice and it's much more booming. And again, gives that indication that wherever they're seeing him in this room, it feels like he's a god. He says, no, it's not about grasping, but rather digesting. Again, what he's learned. What he learned from Gustav. Not those boundaries that everybody teaches. Not discovery, but rather acting. Move, do things, do divinations. That's what he's learning right now. Name is not symbolism. It's also imagery. It's the key to digesting. Again, this is what he's learning from Gustav. And he's passing that on to them, which is very interesting. It's interesting that he's deciding to sort of cultivate them as sort of, again, his pawns. Rather than trying to keep those secrets from them, it's almost like he's trying to bump them up to his level, which is a kind of an interesting route for him to go. They thank him for it, and then, yes, she goes on to her other questions. Her second question is, what happens when an animal consumes the potion? They're not like, what? She did not. She got all excited when she made the potion. The dog drank it. Hangman's like, well, usually they die or become a monster. If not, then it's a Beyonder animal. Okay, that's a thing now. Okay, we're getting into the... Okay, we're just going to accept now that there's Beyonder animals. Apparently. And they can talk. That's so dorky. And then, yes, her last question was about the Leon Kingdom, which we find out later on that she's a princess of, is that they're having a little bit of a problem right now. Royalty and nobility has been looking to reform. And so apparently the decision here that Klein comes up with is to do a massive exam for everybody, commoners alike. Everybody all wants to seek to, keep the kingdom. Have everybody come forth, find the best, the most skilled individuals, and put them into play. Okay. I'm not sure that most kingdoms would accept that, but I guess if you're in a very bad state, you don't have much of a choice. Call it the, I like I get the booming voice, call it the higher exams. But anyways, that all leads to him asking for his favors, which is where, you know, I give you something, you give me something. I scratched your back, you scratch my back. Which, yes, the first one is to look for the Gustav's secret diary. And very quickly, yeah, Hangman picks up on that. Wait, he's calling a diary. These are secret texts, so he can read them. Which does technically imply to me that he plans on meeting these two individuals at some point, which is kind of curious because I kind of assumed up until this point that he was always going to keep sort of this vision for them as a god. If they do end up finding one of these diaries, you would think that he's going to have to, I guess he can have one of them just drop it off somewhere. I guess that could be what he could do. And yes, the second one was to alter the ritual. Which, yes, does include the idea of putting 3 different descriptions in for him. Which, yes, the Hangman picks up on very quickly. He's putting himself up in equal with the 7 gods. If it's directed at him, he'll be honored as a god. Which, yeah, that's kind of where the conclusion I'm coming to, what sort of happened at the very end, because he did it. And then later on, Justice did it. And it seemed to have somehow tapped him into that power. I'm not sure. I didn't see in the fight that it looked as if he got power from it. I didn't see the smoke come up, the fog come up and do something, or he created something. It could have just been merely what sort of kept him alive, or at least repelled a lot of the infection that was going into him. But yeah, very, very interesting little bit there. Please go home and do a ritual that calls me a god, basically. All right, Chief. Thanks for the info about digesting. I'm going to go digest some potions. I'll get my dog to digest it too. But yeah, that's when we cut to Selena's party. They go in there, quickly find out that one of Melissa's desires at the party was to fix Benson's problem with marriage. But come to find out, it was Elizabeth. Elizabeth's only 16, so that ain't going to work. Klein's like, what the hell are you doing, sister? Oh, wow. That was... Melissa's special. Wait, it's her friend, isn't it? I guess technically it's not Melissa's direct friend. It could be Selena's friend, and they meet through that. I don't know. It's like, how do you not know what her age was? Unless she was thinking of doing it anyways, and she's like, I guess I gotta address this, but do you think it's okay that she's 16? I don't know. It just seems wrong. But anyway, Selena opens the present, ends up being the mirror. It ends up opening a little mirror pathway to the bad guy, Vincent. He's doing all his crazy rituals to try to attack them and Klein. He does the ritual to ask for a favor of the goddess before, yes, Justice does the ritual, and he gains fog powers. Again, it only kind of showed 4 marks on his hand. I guess that could be the symbolism that he got the powers, but I didn't really see visually something happening. The way that he sort of fought back was that, yes, when the ritual happened, it seemed like something pushed back against them. He didn't see it, but something pushed back. Then he was able to get up, finish the ritual by asking for a favor to expel this. She gets pushed back. He shoots the mirror. I guess, again, the idea here could be that the fog was some sort of unseen thing that pushed back against their power. That's sort of what the conclusion I came to. But yeah, because of all that happening, he decides to keep it a secret from them because it puts their family in danger, which I think this is sort of an interesting thing to sort of play out here. It does seem like he sort of is putting their safety forward. From a perspective of somebody that is an isekai coming into a world, you could see there should be a sort of a disconnection that the person would have from the family that they are part of. If you just randomly one day get sucked to another world and you're in the body of some random dude, would you see the people around you as family? You might not put them on the same level of care as you would your actual family. It does seem like he does care for Melissa. And so right here, he's like, yeah, I can't have them know because it puts their lives in danger. There's still a shred of me that does believe that I think he does feel familial bonds with them because Klein's memory's in his head. That's sort of what I kind of would assume. But anyways, it wraps up with Vincent getting taken out by Oracle 22 Mr. Z. Come to give him his master's grace. Before Klein and the commander come in there and... yeah, it mentions what kind of evil entity is this true creator, which again refers to this Oracle group that believes in this true creator being there, the Hanging Giant, which again, very briefly, it seems like Dunsmith gets a vision of. Now, again, I'm not sure if this is him using his power, his nightmare powers, and seeing into the dude's mind and sees very briefly a vision of the true creator, or if possibly this is something that Dunsmith has seen before and it's a flashback. I didn't really get a sense of what we were doing with that whole shot. But again, based on that vision, I am kind of curious if that is Klein's symbol. I think that would be very interesting. But yeah, it wraps up the episode with going to the capital, Ling Kingdom, zooming in on our Justice Girl, and she's waking up. She got her nice little bed there, getting all dressed up, dances around for a little bit, dances with Susie, little doggy, for a little bit, before suddenly the dog starts talking. She's like, "Who's that? When could you talk? I don't know. I don't know how to explain. I'm just a dog." And it's kind of nice that the dog doesn't suddenly just like go, "All right, kids, sit down. Let me tell you about all my problems I've had with you this entire time." Like, he's like super smart. It's a dog that can now talk. So it's a very simple conversation. It was dorky. It was a very dorky scene. What, like, the most incredible animation for it too. Like, there's so many shows out there that would love to have this shred of animation in an entire episode. They put it in like a few seconds right here. It's dorky. Anyways, I think that's everything. That's my run through of episode 4. Is it right? 4 of Lord of Mysteries. Really, really interesting episode. Despite my little complaints about the Fogland and how it always kind of bugs me how he gets a weird stretch in where he comes to conclusions on, it's still super interesting. The show is still super, super, super interesting. I love it. Anyways, I pre-ordered the book, by the way. I'm loving this show so much, I've decided to pre-order the physical first volume, so I'm looking forward to that coming in. I think it's actually releasing the end of this month, so if you guys are not aware of that, it's coming out this month. And I'll definitely be checking that out one day when I have some spare time. I don't know, maybe if it comes in and I can get some spare time, maybe I'll read through it and do some skip content videos, but I'm not going to make any promises on that, because there might be a crap ton of skip content. I'm sure there's a ton of skip content for this series. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video as always. If you did, hit the like button down below. If you like this content and you want to support the channel more, become a member of the channel. But until next time, y'all take care.